This is the TJ Hoisington Podcast. Unleash your greatness within.
Hello, and welcome to the Unleash Your Greatness Within podcast. Hey, just a couple nights ago, I was asked to present a short message to a small group of teenagers and youth, and let me tell you, I just had a good time with them. But the subject that I was asked to speak on in a matter of about 20 minutes was that of staying motivated. What has to be in place to stay motivated? And so I spoke from my heart. I poured out my energy to these youth, and you know what? We had a great time. So I thought I would share it here on my podcast. Thank you for subscribing to my podcast. Thank you for being a part of my family here. I really appreciate your support, and I hope that you are finding value in the podcast. And if you wouldn't mind just leaving a review or a star rating, hey, that would be great. All right, now let's jump right into it.
All right. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. You know, the guy who wrote that was Ernest Henley. He was in England, he was in the hospital, and he had lost his left leg to tuberculosis, and he was about to lose his right leg. And in his darkest moment, he wrote that famous poem, Invictus. Listen, each one of you has greatness within. You did not come to this earth to be mediocre. So I want to talk to you today about staying motivated, and a lot of that has to do with living your dream life. In 1954, a group of Thai monks were put in charge of moving a large clay statue of Buddha. This is a true story. So they're moving this heavy statue that they needed cranes to move it over the mountains. And as they were moving it, it's 1954, they noticed little cracks started to form in the clay. So they were nervous because this is an ancient artifact. So they decided to hold off for the evening. They put a tarp over it. It started to rain, and they waited till the next morning. That night, they assigned monks in the middle of the night to just look over that ancient artifact with a flashlight. And while one of the monks was looking at that artifact with the flashlight, he noticed where the crack was forming in the clay that there was a reflection coming out. He was curious. So he took a hammer and a chisel and started to chisel away the clay from what was inside that clay statue. And lo and behold, by the morning, they had discovered that underneath that clay was a solid gold statue of Buddha. That statue today rests in a monastery for the public to see in Thailand. You can go see it. You can see pictures of it. Unbelievable that until 1954, because you see, what the historians believe is that 400 years earlier, the Burmese army was coming over the mountains to kill those monks. And in an effort to disguise the true nature of that statue, they covered it with clay. But it took 400 years before they realized exactly what the nature was. I'm telling you, it doesn't take 400 years to come to the realization that you are special, that you have greatness within, that you don't have to prove yourself to anybody. Do you have to work hard? Yeah, you got to work hard if you want to get ahead, but you never have to prove your worth. Whether you do good or whether you do not so good at a grade or at a job or at sports or whatever, that is not a reflection of your true worth. Understand that you have greatness within. But we're here to talk about motivation. And I believe part of staying motivated throughout your life is discovering who you really are. Listen, the key to staying motivated, in part, is you have to find a sense of purpose in your life. Okay, I'll get back to that in a second. There's 3 forms of motivation. The first form of motivation is fear motivation. You can do something and you'll be motivated to do it if someone fears you into it, threatens you to do something, right? But that's temporary. There's a second kind of motivation, and that's incentive motivation. You get something out of it. It's a carrot and the stick. There's a good and a bad time for that, just like there is with fear. There's a good time for that and there's a bad time for that. But the best kind of motivation that you can align yourself with in your life is purpose motivation. What I mean by that is figure out, start thinking about at your age, what do you want your life to look like? I said in the opening, you were not born to be mediocre. You have greatness within. Listen, I was 15 years old when I figured out what I wanted to do with my life, which is to be a speaker and an author. And I've spent 25 years doing just that because I never, ever gave up. Inch by inch, everything is a cinch. Yard by yard, it's hard. It took me over a year and a half to write my thickest book, which is 416 pages. A year and a half. How does someone stay motivated day in and day out to write every day? I'll share that in a second, but I love this. Young man was out looking for a job one day. He was having a difficult time finding a job. Then he went onto the internet and he found that there was an opening at the local zoo. So he calls the local zoo, gets an interview, and it was really interesting because when he went to the local zoo and had the interview, they sat him down and they said, hey, listen, the zoo is basically out of money and our last gorilla has died. And so what we've decided to do, I know it sounds strange, but we've decided to make a gorilla suit out of the gorilla that died. And what we want you to do is put on this gorilla suit and run around like a gorilla, because that'll keep customers coming to the zoo, and eventually we'll have enough money that we'll be able to keep the zoo open. He thinks to himself, okay, this is the weirdest job interview I've ever had in my life. But he says, I need the money, so he took the job. He goes in the first morning, puts on the gorilla suit, zips it up, right? And at the appropriate time, he goes out and starts running around like a gorilla, right? He's out running around. And he realizes into the day that this is a really good job. I mean, think about it. I get to play when I want to play. I get to sleep when I want to sleep. And I get to eat when I want to eat. How many of you would like a job like that, huh? Yeah, right? Okay, so a lot of incentives there. So he's laying in bed the first night after his first day of work, and he's thinking about it. This is a really good job. I'd like to continue to have this job. And so he decides, I'm going to do the best job that a gorilla can do at the zoo. No one's going to be able to beat me at this. I'm going to be the best gorilla you've ever seen. So he goes in the next day, and he gets on the trapeze, and he starts to swing. That's the ropes, right? He starts to swing, and he's swinging as high as he can. And now there's not only just 5 people looking at the gorilla area, there's like the word spread, and there's like 100 people looking at the gorilla area because he is swinging so high. I mean, this gorilla is swinging so high. All of a sudden, the rope broke, and he landed in the lion's den. He didn't realize where he was, so he stood up, he brushed himself off, he looked around, noticed that he was in the lion's den, started to run with his hands in the air. Help, help, somebody come save me. Finally, the lion got close enough to him, and the lion said, be quiet, or we're all gonna get fired in here.
Oh my gosh.
All right, what are the 3 forms of motivation? Fear that caused him to run. What got him the job in the first place? Incentive. But really what's going to make a difference in your life is when you find meaning in what you do and you design your life around that meaning. The best advice, if you were in my home and you were one of my children and I was talking to you about one of the best pieces of advice I could give you, it would be figure out what you want to do in life equip yourself to qualify for that job, and then go to work at it. So how do you stay motivated? What are the rules of motivation? Here's how you stay motivated. Action. Here's a false belief. Most people think this. They think, once I feel motivated, then I will take action. That's a false belief. Here's the true belief based on research. If you will take action, then it's the golden rule. Then the feelings of motivation will come. You say, well, I'll wait to do that once I feel confident. No. If you'll start taking a little bit of action, inch by inch, everything's a cinch, yard by yard, it's hard. If you start taking a little bit of action, the feelings of confidence will come. The feelings of motivation will come. The key is not doubting yourself. The key is not talking yourself out of the goals that you have for yourself, but believing that as long as I take a little bit of action repeatedly, it doesn't mean every single day, but repeatedly, then all of a sudden, that will give you a sense of satisfaction. And when you get that sense of satisfaction, it reciprocates, and all of a sudden, you get more motivation. The key is action. Don't wait until you feel motivated. Take action, and even if it's small, and the feelings of motivation will come. Better yet, design a life that's structured around what you love to do. And it makes it a lot easier, right? But that doesn't mean, even though I'm doing what I love for a career, doesn't mean I enjoy typing my books. That's a painful part of my job, is slowing down and focusing on the words and making sure that it sounds good. And I don't like it, but I force myself to do it. Why? Because I see the end in mind. I have meaning in what I'm doing, and that drives me forward. And I'm saying for you, starting now at your age, you can decide what you want to do, and you can start putting a plan together and then start checking stuff off that you've completed, whether that means read a book. Maybe that means watch a couple YouTube videos on the subject. Whatever it is, start educating yourself and equip yourself with the knowledge and the skills, and eventually you can do that thing. Let's say that you've been asked to do something that you're totally not motivated to do. Let's say your parents ask you to mow the grass, or let's say they've asked you to wash the car or do a chore. Research shows one way that you can find meaning in those things that are mundane is by turning those mundane things into a form of play. Recreation, novelty. So maybe normally it takes you 30 minutes to mow the grass. Maybe it's a personal challenge for you, a sense of progress, to say, I'm going to try to do it in 28 minutes. Or maybe you run cross country and you have a certain time that you normally get. It becomes meaningful when you start saying, okay, I'm going to try to beat that time right there and move a little bit faster, right? And work toward it. That is critical. So when you have to do something you really don't like to do, I hope that none of you spend a lifetime doing things you don't like to do. But even if you do, find meaning in it. Meaning is the key to motivation. When you have meaning and you're willing to get yourself to take action instead of procrastinate, so here's something you can imagine. You can either be motivated by, you can imagine, if I don't do this, and I procrastinate, what are the things that will go wrong in my life? That's one way to motivate yourself. Another way to motivate yourself is to imagine all the blessings that will come by you taking a little bit of action. Now, for the law of the harvest. Has anybody heard the law of the harvest? I'll end with this. The law of the harvest has been around for a lot of years. The law of the harvest says this. Number one, there are 3 laws. Law number 1 is you reap what you sow. You reap what you sow. What does that mean? Based on the energy you put out, you're going to get blessings that harmonize with that energy. And I'll even go one step further. The thoughts you put out, you will attract accordingly. You will find opportunities accordingly, whether they're positive or negative. Okay? Law number 2 is increased returns. What does increased returns mean? Increased returns in the law of nature means this. I can take a tiny little seed, I can put it in the ground, I can nourish it, sun, rain, nourish it, and that tiny seed will grow into a 160-foot fir tree up here in the Northwest. That's increased returns. From a tiny little seed, you get a huge tree. The law of nature is that if you'll put the energy out, you reap what you sow, you get more in return. For every action you put out, you get more in return. Every goodness you put out, you get more in return. But here's the tough one for every generation, and it's law number 3. And that is delayed gratification. You can't cram the harvest. You can't say on Friday, oh yeah, I remember I'm supposed to have a bunch of corn raised and cropped or whatever they call it, and Monday they're going to come pick it up. It's not going to happen. The laws of nature won't allow that to happen. So here's the thing. In life, you take a little bit of action, you get increased returns, you feel motivated, so you keep taking action. You see a little bit of blessings come, and all of a sudden, a couple years later, what do you get in return? Whatever that dream is, whatever that goal is, whatever it is that you hope to do. The key to motivation is take action first, and the feelings of motivation will come. The tough part now is just staying focused and resilient long enough that you can see the fruition of your goals. So you can't give up after 1 or 2 tries. It's a little bit over and over and over and over, and eventually you'll find the success that you're seeking.
So, what did you think? Right? The key to motivation is not waiting around until you feel motivated. It's taking action even when it feels like you're stepping out of your comfort zone, or you don't know how things are going to work out, and so you're a little bit fearful of maybe the unknown or something. I'm telling you, the way to stay motivated is to align yourself with something that is meaningful and purposeful in your life. Or if you're doing something that naturally is not meaningful to you, figure out a way to make it meaningful, and then turn around and actually start taking action, whether it's small or large steps, okay? Consistent small steps will create a processionary effect that will compound over time based on the law of the harvest if you are consistent. And the beautiful thing is, once you do take action, you get a little bit of feedback. It gives you motivation to try again or to continue going forward. Sometimes when you don't get the result that you want, it can teach you a better way to do it, as long as you have a flexible mindset to continue being curious and trying a new way and not giving up. That's the key, right? What most people do, or what some people do, maybe not most, but some people do, is they fail once or twice and they finally say it's not worth it, or I don't have the skills, I don't have the ability, I don't have the education, I don't have this. And so they just stop. And I'm telling you, you don't have to be the smartest person in the world to make dreams come true. You just got to be willing to put in the effort and continually grow, continually work on yourself, develop yourself. You know, Socrates taught many years ago that the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know much anyway. And, you know, learning keeps us humble and it keeps us growing. And when you're green, you're growing. When you're ripe, you rot. That's what Ray Kroc said, the founder of McDonald's, many years ago. When you're green, you're growing. When you're ripe, you rot. So never stop growing. That is the nature of humans, is to grow, is to have a sense of progress. And the only way you can have progress is taking little steps and over time achieving goals or values that are important to you. So just get after it and get started. And you don't need to ask anyone for permission to be successful. Just go do it and let your actions speak louder than your words. All right. I wish you the best. I hope you found this podcast to be useful. Do me a favor, give me a star rating, just give me a thumbs up or something. I would really appreciate it on the app that you're listening to this on. I'd really appreciate it. All right, now go out there and unleash your greatness within.